Hey there, Maria Garaitonandia, and I hope I
Yeah,
pronounced that
you
correctly.
pronounced it beautifully. Perfect.
Welcome to the Red Couch.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, Angie.
It's wonderful that you can be here and that we get to talk to each other from interculturalist to interculturalist,
Yes.
especially considering that we haven't met yet. So I'm all excited and curious to hear everything about you.
Oh, thanks.
And usually, our listeners are also interested in finding out more about you. So
Well,
maybe we could start with a little fun fact.
I'll start. Okay, you always start in the beginning, right? So
Yeah.
I think everything started one day when I was coming back from school when I was about 6. And I find my mom there. She's in a very strange euphoric mood, and she says to me, we're moving to Rome. And I'm like, what's Rome? And she's like, this beautiful place across the ocean where there's culture and art. And all I could think of was, well, do they have the Flintstones and Scooby-Doo there? And she says, oh, of course. And of course, it was a big lie because back then they didn't have any of my favorite cartoons. But that was the beginning of my life as a third culture kid. From
Oh,
then on, 10 years, we lived abroad, and then I moved back to the US and then back abroad. So that was the beginning of my life as someone who really loves everything that has to do with interculturalism.
well, it sounds amazing. So one thing that I have to ask you is that you explain our listeners here and viewers what a third culture kid is, because I don't think anybody has yet talked about this since we started the Red Couch Talk.
Ah,
And you can also
okay.
talk about, why you do what you do.
Okay, and I encourage listeners to just Google third culture kid or TCK. The sociologists usually refer to people who have lived a significant part of their formative years outside of the culture of their family or their parents. And usually they have certain characteristics. It used to be studied, the first sociologist to study about this talked about the children of missionaries or the children of military families, but of course it became much broader. And you can see that there are certain characteristics that TCKs have that make us, when we find each other in the world, we kind of get each other because we've gone through many of the same experiences that are very similar. The having to say goodbye to our friends, having to quickly adjust and adapt. I attended about 8 different schools and 3 different universities, so I knew what it was like to have to be that new kid every couple of years and start every time in a new environment with that knot in my stomach, but at the same time getting better each time I had to make a change where I also had the excitement of knowing that I could reinvent myself
Uh-huh.
to see what would work, because as a kid the only thing you want is to be accepted, right? So
Yeah.
you quickly learn to observe and adapt and observe and adapt, and you do it a little faster, so your learning curve is a little faster. And in a way, I think that's probably what gave me the interest in becoming an interpersonal intelligence expert.
Yeah. Yeah. And interpersonal intelligence expert sounds really fascinating to me. And, when you were talking, I was just thinking about how, with our multilingual selves, we also tend to have different kinds of, let's say, characters that we can play out. Like today, you see me in one of my Indian outfits. So I just like to have that when I sit on the red couch because it makes me look a little bit regal. And yeah, so we have all these different characters and different ways of being. And I sometimes compare this to gloves that you can put on or like a scarf. Like so, your name already sounds Spanish. Mm. You have just told us that you're a TCK. now an ATCK, as we say now, an adult TCK now. And what has all this experience of, having to adapt to new environments, moving from country to country, what has that made you into? What kind of a grown-up did you become from there?
I think one of the things that I can say is you just mentioned your identity. You do look quite regal, by the way. I love the pink. It really shows off your face. I think that one of the things that I learned was that my identity can be kind of fluid, and I could be whoever I want. I might be a nerd in one environment, and I might be a little bit of a jock in a different one. I would also say that thinking back, all of those changes probably helped me adjust and adapt a little more quickly. And if you think about it, what makes for a successful leader is precisely that situational ability. It helps you in anything. And I was watching one of your podcasts with, I think it's Ralph Schonenbach, I think it was, and he was talking about relationships. And I'm thinking, you need to be able to be situational. You need to be able to speak to people from their point of view, to be able to adjust, to style switch, to create bridges with people wherever you are in whatever situation. That's what makes you interpersonally intelligent. And it obviously includes the intercultural intelligence, the emotional intelligence. It's being able to observe and adjust, not just to the linguistic patterns, but also to the social patterns, the cultural patterns, so that your receptor can pick up on your message a little bit easier, to make things easier. And probably this happens to you sometimes, depending on where I am. I'll take on more of a certain accent. Like when I'm in Mexico, I speak more with a Mexican, my Spanish becomes a little more Mexican. When I'm in Miami, I sound a little more Cuban. Because my parents are Cuban, right?
Okay.
But my parents left Cuba during the revolution, settled in the US. I was born in the US. And then, everything else, my kids were raised in Mexico. So there's just so many different elements there that you start picking up, and you become like this mosaic.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. As an adult third culture kid, you realize when people ask you, where are you from? You're like, okay, do you have a few minutes? Because there's not a one word answer to this. So you have to give all of the context first.
Yeah. And you probably know Michael Sullivan as well, right? And he has this podcast, which is called the TCK podcast, and it's called "Where Are You From?" and Other Ridiculous Questions.
Oh, I think I remember. I think I did see him. I just didn't remember the name. Yes.
So he has a whole podcast around this theme, honestly. So Maria, tell me, what do you actually do? How do you work with your clients, for example?
I've been working for about 20 some years. And if in a nutshell, I could explain to you what I do is I basically work with organizations to help their teams untangle communication challenges so that they can get things done.
Yeah.
And that includes probably seeing things because of my TCK background. Sometimes I can see things that they might not be able to see. So I'm kind of an interpreter, if you think about it that way. So whether it's that they're stuck with conflict issues, that they don't know how to get, cross-functional areas working together, or whether it's promoting a little bit more trust within with their stakeholders, or just in general being able to collaborate. Those are the problems that I tend to solve, whether it's in whether it shows up as developing a training or a one-on-one individualized coaching for certain executives, or group coachings, or just shorter programs. It's just anything that might help them undo a lot of these knots that they're facing. That's how I mostly work with all of my clients.
That sounds great. And do you work alone or do you have a team? How are you set up?
I am set up. It's pretty much me and my partners that I work with. So I have partners that specialize in certain areas, so that, for example, one of my colleagues is more focused on more educational. I have another partner that is a psychologist. So depending on what they need, I will partner up with some of my colleagues
Okay.
to help me out.
Wow. Oh, and you've been in this place for a long time, in this business for a long time. By the way, I don't know if you're going to be there, but we should definitely catch up in Portland, Oregon next year at the Seattle USA conference if you go there.
Okay.
Definitely planning to go there. I would put it in my diary already
Okay.
because I haven't been back in Portland since probably 20 years. Where I don't know if you remember, but like 20 years ago, the intercultural scene, they all
Institute.
met in Portland. Yeah, and it was
Yes.
for me at the time, I was a young HR professional. I was like looking for some things to do for my future. I loved it. I just loved the atmosphere. I always love to be with people from many different cultural backgrounds. And it was like, oh my God, here the whole scene is present. So yeah, I hope
Yes,
we can catch up
the
with each
Summer
other.
Institute was great too for
Yeah,
intercultural
yeah,
communication. I really
yeah.
enjoyed that.
Yeah, so Seattle seems to work together with the Summer Institute to get a conference
Right.
to the real world next year. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, do you have any particular tips that you would give a younger person who maybe thinks about joining our field, being, the intercultural, the global mobility field? You've already also been a professor, yeah? So maybe you have some thoughts on what you would say to a younger person as an advice.
Well, one thing that I've really noticed, for example, for Gen Z, and I've been reading a lot because I'm fascinated. Generations are also a culture, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's something you learn and you share with a
yeah,
cohort of people.
yeah.
And I've been fascinated by some of the dynamics that have come obviously from technology and this generation in particular, some great, some not so great, especially when it comes to mental health and
Yeah.
so forth. Now, one of the things that I've been reading, and I think it kind of is true, is that Gen Z is a little shy about asking for help.
Uh-huh.
Um, some of the studies that I've seen, and I don't know if maybe part of it came from the lockdowns during the pandemic and having to do things on your own, and also a little bit of you know, the shyness or timidity of calling people, speaking to them real time. But I would say if I had to give a piece of advice, I'd be like, reach out and find out as much as you can. Yes, the do it yourself DIY is great. Yes, it's good to listen to videos and do that, but you get a lot more substantive information when you talk to people. The good old informational interview. I've been learning a lot
Mhm.
about, for example, the speaking um, business, because I would like to do more speaking. And it is incredible how much and how generous people are when it comes to sharing their knowledge. So I would say, hey, speak to as many people as you can, real time. Yes, watch the videos, but don't forget to talk to people. That's
Yeah,
really, really important.
yeah, and I always say, it's also important to build true connections. Um, so it's one of the things, most of my clients, they mess it up. They don't really understand when I start to talk to them about networking, they don't really understand what I'm talking about. And that's why, the connection with Ralph was so amazing because when we met the first time, which was over 10 years ago, I really had the feeling, we have we're on the same wavelengths when it comes to this topic. And, the fact that he was just happy to meet with me for lunch was also mind blowing for me. So, if you think of the younger generation, I guess this is one of the things, that we probably can teach them a bit. It's like, how do I reach out to a person that I do not know? How do I actually hold a lunch conversation? How do I just spend time with somebody who's maybe a lot more experienced than me or older, without, making them feel awkward on both ends? And so I think that's really extremely good advice, because I also think technology is really important and helpful. I also even think that we can only bring the human touch back into what we do, especially in HR and global mobility, with technology. We need the technology to bring back the human touch. But I also think, we need real connection. And I think one of the reasons why we have so many mental health issues at the moment is because real connection is missing. And, that good old person that you could just go to and call and say, can you come and, make a cup of tea for me? That is somehow missing now in people's lives. Or is this?
Absolutely. And I think that's part of the reason why some companies have opted for making their employees come back face to face.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah,
not
yeah.
all of them have. Some are like hybrid, or others are
Yeah.
totally remote.
Yeah.
But I think it's still an experiment. We're still learning. It's only been almost 5 years from when everything went remote.
Yeah.
But I can understand why, when it
Yeah.
comes to natural, organic creativity, innovation. My brother actually told me that he went and tapped a guy on the shoulder who's on his team the other day, and the guy's like, you could just write to me on Teams chat. And my brother's like, no, dude, the whole point of being here is so that we can talk to each other. We can leave the Teams chat for when we're working remotely, but we're here. This is organic. It has to be impromptu, so. And the guy was younger, so there was this kind of like resistance to this real-time synchronous interaction, which I think is something that younger generations are still struggling with, and
Yeah.
very important for, I would say, for leaders to encourage more of what you say is this real human connection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's going to be important for creativity, but I think it's also important for mental health. And still, you and I, we have companies to run and we have clients to get. How do you play the social media world? What is your favorite playing ground?
Well, it depends for what. So, for example, my guilty pleasure is X. I just go on there and read all the latest gossip, and I love to
Okay.
just read through the gossip. Now, when it comes to professional, I would say LinkedIn is where that's my go-to platform.
Uh-huh.
That's where I see what other people are doing, and I learn a lot, and I connect with people via LinkedIn. When it comes to the other fun ones like you know, Facebook and Instagram, I follow Instagram just to see what my daughter's doing.
That's funny.
So I guess there's a little bit of everything for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. What do you think of YouTube?
Oh, yes, that's great too. That's great for all kinds of resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for
And also,
sure.
for learning stuff that you normally maybe, don't know how
Yes.
to approach.
Oh, yes. I'm subscribed to a number of things, and ironically, even though I'm very much a newbie when it comes to AI, there's
Yeah.
a couple of people that are just wonderful. And so I feel at least I know some of the stuff that's going on, because man, this is a great disruptor, and it's making a big change in how we do everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm experimenting. I like to experimenting with technology. Um, but I just found a video that I shot in 2018 for YouTube, and I just realized I never made it public.
Oh,
So, now that I have a bit more practice and I looked at it again, I thought it's actually a pretty cute video. So I think I should put it to, make it public, because it's an instruction on active meditation, which is one of the, methods I teach people to relax.
uh-huh.
So yeah. So sometimes, it's also a bit about getting over yourself and just daring something. Yeah, just
Yeah, right. Well, I don't know about you, but I know that as years go by, I don't really fret so much about, oh, do I look strange in the
yeah,
camera? It's like,
yeah,
okay, it is what it is.
yeah. I was more concerned when I started, so I
Yeah.
just realized that, now I don't really care anymore. It's fine. It's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
I
You
am
kind of
who
get
I
you get
am.
more, yeah, more comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
If only we did that 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, I wish I would have started 20 years ago with YouTube, but then
Yeah.
probably didn't even exist. Yeah. Yeah. So, what have you got coming up? Now, we already said next year is the Theater Portland, Theater USA conference in Portland. But do you organize anything, any events, anything you would like to highlight that we can add to the show notes?
I will be speaking in December here in Orlando
Mhm.
at a TEDx-like platform called She Echoes,
Great.
that's organized by Global Women of Impact. So I'm really looking forward, and the subject is from adversity to advancement. So there's going to be a panel of women there, and we're each going to get a slot to speak, and I'm really excited about that.
That sounds amazing. Congrats on, first of all, getting the gig, and also good luck with the presentation. I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I will link to your social media link in our show notes here. And Maria, I look forward to meeting you in person in
Thank
2020.
you. Me too. Take care.
Let's plan that. Okay.
Thank you, Angie.
Have a good one. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.